Chelsea have entered the market for a midfielder who is not only not a teenager, he's over the age of 25. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stanford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And we've got some transfer news to talk about today, man. Obviously, Chelsea take on Crystal Palace this weekend in the Premier League, but in and around before all of that happens, we've got some transfer news to talk about, which I feel like any transfer news is just polarising at the moment, isn't it? But I, for one, think this is actually something fans have been asking for, so I'm going to be really interested to get your guys' opinion on it. But guys, before we get into it, if you are enjoying the content and would like to see more, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Oh, and by the way, guys, we're upgrading. We're in uniform now. We're in uniform. Stanford Sync uniform. Love to see it. Love to see it. So, Douglas Luiz, 27-year-old Brazilian midfielder, made famous by his time at Aston Villa, bought by Juventus after an absolutely phenomenal season, loaned to Nottingham Forest this season, and is struggling to get into their team, right? So, where's the news come from? What's the reason for it? Let's just break it all up and dive into it. So the news has been rattling on for the last couple of days, but in particular, there has been a tweet that has come out today from Fabrizio Romano himself, and you know when that comes out that we're actually talking about something, and it says this: Chelsea made initial approach with Juventus to discuss Douglas Luiz loan deal. No interest in obligation to buy. Chelsea want a straight loan. So this is a good thing, I guess, because what we don't want to get caught up in is we're going to loan this player, but you absolutely have to buy. You know, we've kind of been burnt with that with the whole Nicholas Jackson thing as well. We tried to put this obligation in, Bayern Munich weren't up for it, and for the same sort of reason we shouldn't be up for this one. Do you know what I mean? It's Douglas Luiz could be a very good player based on some of the stuff that he's done in his career so far, and he's not super old, do you know what I mean? But at the same time, because he's not been performing amazingly well recently, it's a massive gamble to take. So why are we even looking at a midfielder in the first place, right? Well, our midfield depth at the beginning of the season looked great. It looked amazing, but the way things have played out, it's just been really, really, really difficult, man. Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo have been relied upon game after game after game after game after game, having already been relied upon that much last season, and only Andre Santos essentially has been like a backup that's been kind of ready and able to play. Reece James has filled in a lot there. Malo Gusto, when Maresca was in, he played a lot there as well, but what we don't really have is that backup for Moises Caicedo, right? Which essentially Dario Asugo was supposed to be that. So in Liam Rosenior's press conference today pertaining to the game against Crystal Palace at the weekend, he said this: breaking, Rosenior says Asugo is out for 1 month and plus after slipping in training. So Asugo's been on the bench a couple of times recently, so we thought that might be the end of it, but what we might be looking at here, unfortunately, is another Lavia 2.0. But kind of even worse, because he hasn't even made it into the first team. The issue with Lavia, who's still out, by the way, is that we know how good he can be, and in some aspects transformative to the way that we play. Amazing passer, absolutely unbelievable passer. With Dario Asugo, we haven't seen him enough to even know if he can be that able deputy. He's a very young player. I think he's maybe 21 now, but he was 20 years old when we bought him from Sporting Lisbon. But without Lavia and without Dario Asugo, our actual midfield, literally comprises of Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, and Andre Santos. Reece James been doing an admirable job there recently, but you'd have to think Liam Rosenior probably, because he also likes to do a little bit of that inverted fullback thing, albeit not quite as much as Maresca did. You think Reece James is going to be the perfect candidate to play that right centre-back role in the back of a back three, where he can still affect the game, still get forward sometimes, but ultimately be resolute in defence, right? So for me, getting a midfielder makes sense. I've been talking about it for a while. I think, you know, I always thought we needed to come in for an experienced midfielder. I think the worst thing we could have done is gone in and got another youngster or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So Douglas Luiz ticks a lot of boxes in that respect. He's Premier League experienced. He's 27, so he's been in and around for a bit, do you know what I mean? And he's not massively injury prone. He's had a couple of injury issues over the last few seasons, but nowhere near the likes of what we're seeing with Lavia and Asugo and stuff. So, Douglas Luiz, let's have a look at the Douglas Luiz that we're going to get versus the Douglas Luiz that we want, because you never know. This is one of those things, isn't it? You never know that the right player, the right manager, the right concoction of moments can turn a player into something unbelievable. I've mentioned it a few times in previous videos with Eddie Howe doing such an amazing job with Joel Linton, and Arne Slot obviously doing a great job with Ryan Gravenberch as well. So, you know, not just about turning them into other positions, but players can reinvigorate their careers. And Douglas Luiz is not like a 30-year-old. Do you know what I mean? He's 27 and has quite in recent memory been an amazing player in the Premier League. So there is something to say that maybe that we can get the best out of him again. So this is him. This is Douglas Luiz. So what we're going to look at first is what the Douglas Luiz that we're probably getting that's on loan at Nottingham Forest versus the one we want, who was at Aston Villa for the 23-24 season before he was sold to Juventus. So Douglas Luiz, Brazilian, 27-year-old midfielder, 175 centimetres, and he is right-footed as well. For Nottingham Forest this season, he has played 14 matches, 4 in the Europa League, 1 in the FA Cup, 8 in the Premier League, and 1 in the EFL Cup. He has only got 1 assist to his name across the whole season so far, so not absolutely unbelievable, but his ratings, for the most part, other than in the Premier League, are reasonably good. He's played really well in the Europa League, that's where he got his assist. He's played well in the FA Cup, and he's played well in the EFL Cup. And you would have thought the cups are probably where he's going to get a lot of the game time he's going to get, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, like for the, with the Premier League being so important to get us into top 4, top 5, you would have thought Moises Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, that's our pair, isn't it? That's our pair, especially if we can get Cole Palmer back up to scratch as well. We're going to talk about Cole Palmer a little bit more later, but that's the Nottingham Forest Douglas Luiz that we're looking at right now. Now, the caveat with that is no one's having a particularly good time at Nottingham Forest this season. Obviously, they sacked Nuno at the start of the season, which was mad if you ask me. They replaced him with Ange Postecoglou, which was even more mad, I'm not going to lie, and he was sacked very, very quickly, only a few games in charge. They've been taken over by Sean Dyche, who, don't get me wrong, I really like Sean Dyche. I think it's great that he's got the Forest job, but at the same time, I'm like, I can see why Douglas Luiz. Sean Dyche isn't exactly known for getting the best out of like marauding, creative attacking midfielders, or not necessarily an attacking midfielder, but we know that Douglas Luiz has got good attacking impetus, and Sean Dyche is a little bit of a Brexit baller when it comes down to it, and his job is to keep Nottingham Forest in the Premier League this season. Do you know what I mean? It's just to avoid relegation. So, I can 100% see why Douglas Luiz doesn't fit the profile of midfielder that Sean Dyche in particular is going to like at the moment. So, albeit it's not been an amazing time for Douglas Luiz at Nottingham Forest, he's gone through 3 managers this season, and, it's just one of those, isn't it? Now, this, what we're going to move on to now is the Aston Villa Douglas Luiz, who flourished under Unai Emery in the Premier League and had a phenomenal season. In the 23-24 season, he played 53 games in all competitions, so that is beyond trusted, do you know what I mean? That's the same sort of amount that we're getting from Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez last season, for instance. Do you know what I mean? 35 in the Premier League, so all but 3 Premier League games, 14 Conference League games, 3 FA Cups, 1 EFL Cup game. So he was obviously really prioritised in the big stuff, right? He played a lot in the Conference League and obviously a huge amount in the Premier League that season. And on his way, he got 10 goals and 10 assists. 20 goals and assists, 20 goal involvements from a deep-lying midfielder is phenomenal numbers, man. Absolutely phenomenal numbers. And then there was a lot of talk, a lot of different people were interested in Douglas Luiz, and it was ultimately Juventus who came in and said, we're going to have a bit of that, thank you very much. But unfortunately, it just didn't work out for Douglas Luiz at Juventus, right? So, look, I'm not saying he's going to get even, half, 5 goals, 5 assists. That's a big ask of someone who ultimately is probably not going to smash his way into the first team. But if we can get half of 50% of the performance that we got out of that Aston Villa got out of Douglas Luiz in the 23-24 season, that'd be amazing. I think it's a little bit disingenuous just to look at his time at Forest so far this season and say that's the player that we're getting, because Forest have... It's been a nightmare. Do you know what I mean? It's like, we know something about basket case clubs. Not Forest 100% have been that this season. For them to be fighting for the Champions League and to the last day of the season, in the game against us, by the way, last season, for them to be where they are now is wild. Do you know what I mean? It's wild. All of their goodwill is kind of gone, and their owner Marinakis, like, he's a really, really big character. They are starting to settle under Sean Dyche a little bit now. But like I say, it's been so intense, and the drop-off's been massive, and there's been so much change at Nottingham Forest this season. I'm not necessarily going to put that down to Douglas Luiz has just not been good enough. So it'd be really interesting to see what happens if we do pick him up at Chelsea. So guys, what do you think? Douglas Luiz. Now, obviously, the first thing, he's 27. He's experienced. Do you know what I mean? He's got experience in a very good Aston Villa team. He's got a season where he got absolutely phenomenal numbers in the Premier League under a good manager, surrounded by good players. That's the other thing as well, isn't it? Like, the Chelsea team is, albeit maybe not exactly where we want it to be, it's a lot stronger than the Nottingham Forest team is at the moment. So maybe with those kind of players around him, Douglas Luiz can unlock some of his better form. I'm always about the hopium and the copium, man, at the end of the day, because I want to see my team do well. Now, I don't think in January there's loads of other options. I've been saying this for ages, man, that we need to reinforce our midfield this January, 100%. And I think Douglas Luiz is the exact kind of signing that we should be looking to make. If we can get it without the obligation to buy, I think that's brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Because we need a body, we need a number there. Asugo is made out of glass. Romeo Lavia is made out of glass. Moises Caicedo cannot play every single game. And, you know, obviously André Santos will be better in that kind of Enzo Fernandez role than I think although he does play admirably as a number 6, I think getting someone in to be a solid backup to Moises Caicedo for the rest of the season is a great idea. So guys, tell me what you think. Douglas Luiz, is it a yay or an A from you? For me, I'm not saying he's going to come in and be amazing, but I'm saying in order to steady the season, obviously Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez are the two. Do you know what I mean? They're the guys. They're the guys that we're going to have in our midfield going forward. André Santos has already proved that he can be very useful to Liam Rosenior as well. So having someone other than Reece James to support Moises Caicedo in that spot, because like I say, I really want to see Reece James play more at that right centre-back sort of role as well. And Malo Gusto should be the backup to him in right-back at the end of the day when we want to play like a, you know, more of a byline wingery thing. You know, so it makes sense. I see the logic if we can get a good tune out of Douglas Luiz. Now, that is the question, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, there is a chance he might just come in and be terrible, and that would suck. Do you know what I mean? We've done that loads of times where we've got experienced players in on loan and it hasn't worked out. But just to compare it to a crazy decision that we've already made this season, I think getting Douglas Luiz in on loan is a much better idea than it was to get Facundo Buonanotte, for instance. So, guys, that's it for the Douglas Luiz news. We will see what happens over the next few days pertaining to that, I am sure. But the next thing I want to talk about is the rampant news about Cole Palmer that's been going on over the last few days. Now, you know, we've all seen it. Cole Palmer is not his most happy self at the moment. Now, what's really difficult is, especially for him as well, is everyone's speculating on why that is, right? It's really easy to assume that he's not happy because the team's a mess and everything's chaotic as well. But I think another really obvious thing to look at is he's been injured for a really long time. A season ago, a bit more than a season and a half ago, he was arguably the best player in the country, and his injuries have really been holding him back, man. Do you know what I mean? His injuries have really been holding him back, and he was so free under Mauricio Pochettino, and then obviously became much more of a system player under Enzo Maresca, which ultimately didn't look like it was getting the best out of him anyway. So Cole Palmer, like, you know, the big thing was he didn't celebrate when he scored the penalty in the Brentford game, did he? And that was sad to see, do you know what I mean? Because, you know, obviously all the players around him were really trying to G him up and stuff. But there is a large, you know, both things could be true, or it could be one or the other. He might not be happy with what's going on at the moment because he thinks his chances of winning silverware might be getting slimmer. But also, he might just be unhappy with his own performance because he's seen what he can do when he's at his best. And even under the start of Enzo Maresca's tenure, he scored 4 goals against Brighton in one half of football. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely unbelievable. Scenes. So I think there's a lot of reasons that Cole Palmer might not be happy, and I'm not necessarily willing to just say it's because of Bluco. Do you know what I mean? I think there's loads of reasons, man. I don't think that's reasonable. So in his press conference, when asked about Cole Palmer, Liam Rosenior came out swinging, and he had this to say.
I've had numerous conversations with Cole, and he seems very, very happy to be here. He is very, very happy to be here. He's a huge part of our plans in the long term. He's an outstanding player. Every player goes through difficult moments in their careers in terms of injury. I don't think it's any reflection on his quality. He's an outstanding footballer. But my job and the club's job is to get him in a place where he can consistently perform at the level that he wants to. And there was frustration in the Brentford game, not because he wasn't happy here, just because he couldn't perform. He was in pain. He couldn't perform to the level he wanted to do for the club. He's a great kid. And he's an outstanding player, but we have to make sure that we look after him in the right way. That's why I haven't involved him in the last game.
So managers are going to say what they're going to say, right? You know, at the end of the day, he's not going to come out and be like, yeah, Cole Palmer's thinking about leaving, but I just don't think it makes any sense. The clubs that he's being linked with, yeah, okay, maybe he'd like to move back up north because, you know, he lived with his mum, do you know what I mean, before he moved to Chelsea and stuff already. So, you know, he probably misses his family and stuff like that. But when you look at the teams, the Manchester United noise all seem to be connected to him wanting to go back up north. Okay, that's fine. Don't get me wrong, Manchester United obviously look better under Carrick. It's one game against Man City, man. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, you know, they've still got so much work to do, and Michael Carrick isn't even necessarily going to be their manager. So it's not like he's looking at Man United next season and being like, whoever they're going to get, it's obviously going to be brilliant. Do you know what I mean? It's not really obvious looking at Man United at the moment that they're a better option than Chelsea are for his development. So I don't think that you know, the Northern thing, he's a man clad, yeah, 100% I can see that, but the team's still a bit of a basket case. And the other link was about Manchester City if Enzo Maresca goes there. And I'm like, what is this revisionism of the Enzo Maresca situation where all of a sudden, just because he's not at Chelsea anymore, he's good enough for Man City, he's been linked to Real Madrid. Like, I'm like, mate, he lost, like, he got 2 wins in 9 games against Cardiff and Everton. And ultimately, that was terrible. Do you know what I mean? And I can't believe that was all just because he didn't get the centre back that he wanted in the summer. Do you know what I mean? I think that at the end of the day, he let his personal feelings about his disagreements with the board affect the way that he was managing the team, because a month prior to that, we were second in the Premier League with exactly the same team. So I don't get this revisionism that all of a sudden Enzo Maresca's this top world-class coach. Don't get me wrong, like, I was buzzing when we won those 2 cups last year, but I also agreed at the same time they're not the biggest cups in the world, and ultimately doing it over a 38-game season is the way to go. So I'm not, although yes, he was linked with a possibility of taking the Manchester City job, I don't think Manchester City are looking at his time at Chelsea and being like, yeah, he's the guy. And also Palmer, having played under him and being misused a couple of times and having a bit of the magic sucked out of him, I'm not looking at Cole Palmer looking at Enzo Maresca and being like, yeah, I definitely just want to go and play for that guy. I think some of this news is a little bit crazy, man. So regarding the Cole Palmer rumours as well, PYS reposted something from Fabrizio Romano, and he said, regarding rumours about Cole Palmer and a Manchester return, Chelsea position is very clear. He's a crucial part of the project and they don't want him to leave. Chelsea are not on alert for anything at this stage. There will always be rumours around a top player like Cole Palmer, but as of today, January, nothing is happening, and Chelsea are also counting on Cole Palmer at this stage. Also, Rosenior message was quite clear playing down the reports. So look, that just makes sense, man, doesn't it? At the end of the day, we'll see what happens for the rest of the season, but before all of these teams are thinking about coming to spend 100 mil plus on Cole Palmer, by the way, because that's what it will be. It'll be huge amounts of money. He's going to have to actually string a load of games together and get into some better form. Do you think even Manchester United or Manchester City right now at the moment are looking at Cole Palmer with his groin injuries, his lack of form, and struggling to get back into rhythm and being like, yeah, we'll spend 100 mil on that right now. That's a great idea. Like, Manchester United did that with Mason Mount. Do you know what I mean? Mason Mount had been injured and struggling for form. They spent huge amount of money on him. It was like 70 mil or something they spent on Mason Mount. And he's only just getting into the team now 3 seasons later. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think we all need to put the kibosh on the Cole Palmer stuff for a little while. At the end of the day, Bluecoat are in control of it. But Cole Palmer will be able to agitate for a move as and when he wants to. But although I do think that everyone will be looking at Cole Palmer being like, everyone would love to have top tier prime Cole Palmer in their squad. Of course they were. Of course they would. But we're not looking at that right now. Cole Palmer needs to get fit and he needs to find form. When he's there, then I'll be willing to entertain ideas that other teams are going to come in for him. But as he is right now, I just think it's a bit silly, don't you? Right, guys, I'm going to start wrapping it up there. Thank you very much for sticking around to the end of the video. If you did, I will catch up with you all very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.